Welcome to the Honey Bear Warehouse. I'm Margaret.
I'm John.
And this is our January wrap-up.
Do you want to start? You've been reading exclusively treat books, right?
Yes.
So maybe you could do like 1, and then I could do 5, and then you could do 1.
Well, the thing of it is that I'm reading I don't know what they're called as a series. Do you?
Of your books?
Yeah.
No.
Blood Grace.
Blood Grace.
The Blood Grace series by Vela Roth. So if I go into what's happening in the books, it's like it's a spoiler of the whole series.
Well, yeah, I mean, don't spoil it, but you can do vibes, like generic kind of brush strokes, because you've really been enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something that I really enjoy about these books is that our characters are good. Mm-hmm. They make reasonable choices. They are kind. They are considerate and thoughtful. They really care about our main two love interests. They really care about each other, and they care about making the world a better place. That's like so different from so many fantasy books and fantasy romances where we've got these like broken, damaged, traumatized people who have to get the frick over themselves before they can learn to love.
Oh.
I mean, like, in a sense, maybe the female character, Cassia, maybe had to like get over some amount of trauma, but like when it comes down to it, she just fell in love like a normal person does. And like, we didn't have any big training montage. There was no unnecessary cruelty to each other that's like played off as some kind of banter or anything. When I first started reading them, they made me cry a lot because it was the closest thing I think to my own experience of falling in love with the person that I consider my person.
This is embarrassing.
That I have ever experienced.
I'm going to put this on the internet. People are going to know we like each other.
Ew.
That's gross.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got other characters and other parts of the world that they've explored now, and we've even gotten a little bit into the point of view of some other characters, but I like all the other characters. I like their friends. I like their family. Once again, good, reasonable people who want to do the right thing. And maybe I like things to be black and white, because the villains, they're just villains.
No, there's no complexity there.
Yeah, there's no like morally gray. I mean, there's no morally gray, because if someone is doing something violent or hurtful and they're like a good character, it's because they are very misinformed, you know? And once they are informed that actually that's not the right thing to do or the way to treat somebody, they just get better.
Growth, change.
And I love that.
Improvement.
I think all of these books, did you Google it? They were all like released at the exact same time in 2022.
The first like 3 or 4 were released in the same year, which is wild because they're like very long.
One thing that is relevant, I think, and why a lot of people probably won't like these books is that they are hardcore vampire smut, as well as, in my opinion, a beautiful love story and a very interesting world. There's a lot of that. And John, I said that if he was going to read them, he was going to have to very quickly get into drinking blood as an intimate act.
And I told you there's no threat of me reading these books, so...
There's something about, and the other fantasy romance girlies are with me on this one, the way they make it seem drinking blood, it like, in my head, it tastes like lemonade, but like the Cheesecake Factory lemonade.
Oh, like the strawberry lemonade?
Yeah.
The house-made strawberry lemonade at Cheesecake Factory TM?
Where like, that's the best thing I've ever tasted in my life, and like, it zings. And then it's also a powerful aphrodisiac.
What is the sugar rim stand-in here? Like, what do you garnish your blood?
Skin.
Oh. Like dried skin?
No.
Oh.
Skin. Where you're not drinking out of a glass, are you? You're drinking out of a neck.
Oh.
Or a wrist if you're chased.
Oh, so it's like probably sweat, right? There are too many body fluids going on here.
And it's beautiful.
Oof.
And I love it so much. So anyway, I'm on the 7th book, I think, or 6th out of 8. And I'm really hoping that it's 8 total, not 8 so far. Because
really?
on the one hand, I would probably just read these books forever. But on the other hand, maybe 6 weeks is a long time to be only focused on one book series or one world. I don't know. For me, I'm into true crime now. I've never been into true crime in my entire life.
Oh yeah, you always avoided real things.
I don't like real things, but shout out to Rotten Mangoes on YouTube. I just really like the way that she talks about not just true crime, but just like her whole vibe is, isn't this a crazy story? And I like the way that she tells it too. So I've been kind of addicted to the Rotten Mangoes
I can't remember what the name of the lady is that I watched for like a month straight that did true crime videos.
What if it's the same one?
I don't think it is. Didn't you show me this new one? And I was like, I don't know, Dieter.
Yeah. Like the one I was just listening to in the car ride home from the Indian restaurant we went to was this family of 14 with 12 kids and the mom and the dad.
Too many people.
And 6 of them were diagnosed with schizophrenia and definitely had it.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the other 6 are just like, didn't have it.
Didn't have it.
Or at least live lives where their schizophrenic tendencies are not on display. Look at her.
She's Lux. I don't think they can really see her. Do you want to reenact the scene when you texted me help while I was upstairs and I came downstairs to see you doing something? I think it would be valuable for posterity.
We can reenact it.
Yeah. It is a good one.
It had me rankled. It had me in a state.
Yeah, I'm looking down at my phone. I get 3 text messages. One of them is help with like 6 Ps. One is help with like 12 Ps. And then I get helpo.
I freaked out. I'm down here doing the dishes or whatever. And the audiobook is like, this is the end of the audiobook. Thanks for listening on Audible. But literally, they had our main characters in the middle of the Makul Desert has just been picked up by a flying hawk man.
You said it was an eagle.
An eagle. He's an eagle. Yeah, by an eagle and just being, bloop, and I'm riding with the eagle now. And then the book didn't even know where they were going. And then it's like, oh, you have to spend another credit to get to the part 2 of it. So.
Okay, and what happened after that?
So I was running around a little bit.
What were you saying?
Oh. And that's just a really bad place to put in the middle of the book. I mean, like maybe in page count wise or time wise, it was a place to put but I evil that I had to get another audience. And that was, and the reason it was an emergency is because he's like, hey, stop spending my mom's Audible credits. And then I'm like, they're Sharon's. So helpo was needed. And I was running.
Yeah.
I was running around a little bit, okay?
Luckily, I don't think my mom will ever notice, but, you know.
What if she watches?
She won't.
Okay. So that's been a bit of a topic of conversation is the time that the audiobook ended right when the eagle picked her up. And then I had a bit of a meltdown about it.
She really did. It was pretty cute. It was like the severity of the text messages. I thought she had found a cockroach. That's generally what elicits this sort of reaction. So I was like, okay, go downstairs and take care of a cockroach. And then she's running back and forth. And like, the eagle. So
yeah, basically,
it was pretty good. It was pretty good.
I'm heavily invested in what happens to every single one of these characters. I have to know. And actually, there's like a huge thing that is happening in the books right now where I don't know if you're aware of vampire fiction or vampire romances.
Like true vampire lore or, I don't know, like Dracula garbage.
The way that they all just are, even Dracula.
Oh, there's sparkly?
Yes.
Okay.
There's always a moment in which, well, is she going to be a vampire now? And the answer is always yes.
Dun, dun.
But this is the moment. Well, we've had a few scares, but like it's like the 7th book. It must be now.
Whoa.
I guess that is a bit of a spoiler. I don't want to give anyone any spoilers because I want everyone to read this, but I also don't want anyone to read this because it's mine. These are my books and you can't have them.
Whoa.
They're mine.
Haven't you tried to get multiple people to read them?
Barely.
Barely.
Not as many as I've tried to get to read Bury Your Gaze.
Mm.
Or even A Court of Thorns and Roses. Because I feel like that series is just topical. And
yeah, it is in the zeitgeist.
I think that my friends who like to talk about things should know about this.
Mm. But have you considered...
But the Blood Grace series, that's mine. I wonder if like Anne Rice people feel like that.
I don't know.
Because it is also like, if you don't want to hear about blood in the bedroom, then you're not going to like it.
And why would you?
But if that doesn't bother you, if it's all whatever anyway.
Yeah, I guess there are a few more barriers to entry here, right? Because it's, from my understanding, smuttier.
White.
Right? Than something like Akatar.
It's a bit high spice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're also in love, so.
Whoa. But, I mean, it's like if there is more spice and that spice involves one of the more upsetting bodily fluids you can have, might be a barrier to entry.
Whatever. These books are my personal brand of heroin.
Whoa. They're the Bella of books.
Yeah. And I'm the Edward.
Crazy.
So that's what I've been doing for not even just January, but well back into December as well.
Yeah, because it's like...
Now it's February.
It's been how long?
February.
Since you've been reading these?
Well, I started them, I want to say like maybe October, but then I read a bunch of other ones. So what must have happened is that the first book and the second book kind of just stuck in the back of my mind until I was like, time to read the next one. Perhaps the way that the Kushiel's Legacy books will be for me. Because I read those two first ones, Kushiel's...
Oh, that's the Dart, right?
Dart and Kushiel's Chosen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those two are also like big, expansive, high fantasy worlds with really interesting, good characters. And I love the way that the writer writes, and I love her style. But it's just books that sort of live rent-free in my head right now. And then when I need something to read, I'll start the third one. And maybe it's a sign of a really good writer when the third one is actually, oh, we're picking up now. We're picking up steam.
I think that's kind of common.
Yeah?
I think a lot of times the second book, people think of it as one of the worst books. I can't think of any because if the second book's bad, I just stop the series. So I haven't read any series where the second book is bad because nobody's got time for that.
You know what's crazy is that Akatar, the second book, I would say is the best one.
I feel like that happens also fairly often, like the Ender's Game series, especially with like the first 3 novels that are all pretty good, but Speaker for the Dead is one of the best sci-fi books of all time. Same thing with Stormlight Archives, which is a dumpster fire for me at this point. But the second book is, again, one of the best fantasy books I've ever read.
What about New Moon?
I, honest to God, cannot separate New Moon and Eclipse in my head.
Really?
They're the. I mean, I guess in New Moon she's like doing more of the pining over Edward.
Yeah.
I don't think New Moon and Eclipse are bad. I don't think they're as good as Twilight. Maybe it's just because Twilight was the like first of its kind.
Arte.
But it's not like Breaking Dawn, which is bad, right? Like New Moon and Eclipse are pretty decent.
Breaking Dawn is a whole thing.
Breaking Dawn is bad. Stephanie Meyer had no idea what she was doing. And she I remember being so checked after the spoilers for Breaking Dawn 20 years later. When they're like doing the battle and then she's like, oh, this actually all just happened in Alice's head. And I was like, bro, what are you talking about? I mean, I thought all of the honeymoon stuff was bad, but that really, like when she's like dreaming of playing chess with him, it's like, bro, wake up and play chess with him. What? I
don't remember that. I remember that, but I don't know why it was in the book.
Because Stephanie Meyer she had no plan for how to end the book. And so I think she just tried to do everything. Mm-hmm. And it really feels pretty sloppy. Sorry for the spoilers and the digression.
Oh, I love that.
But no, I don't think New Moon is better than Twilight. I think Twilight's the highlight of that series.
Okay, so maybe all of our theories on second books, maybe we need hard data for this.
Probably. I mean, for me, I would say that it's likely that the second book in series is generally really good because I just won't get past it if it's not good. Yeah,
I feel like the third book is make or break for me. Then again, I'm here for like 8 book series. I'm going to just keep reading them.
Yeah.
Regardless.
For me, a series has to be good or at least pleasant to read every time. Like you can't have a bad book and then me finish the series. You know?
Yeah.
I just don't have it in me. I don't have that kind of dedication to the craft.
I think a lot of people probably stop at Qatar at the third book because it's the one where they fight the war with King Highburn.
Yeah.
And then the fourth book is the Christmas episode and the fifth book is the Sisters episode, which are great. For me, it goes second book, fourth book, fifth book.
I don't know if I've ever read more than like 3.5 books in a series that isn't Harry Potter or Twilight.
Wow. We've been talking a lot about books we've read as children, but you read the Boxcar.
Yeah, but I read those in the sense of I would go to the library on the day AR points were due and read like 5 of them to get my AR points. They were not sequential. They made no impact on me.
Sequential?
I don't know. I also read a lot of American Girl books.
Really?
For that. Yeah, they were really easy to get through.
Wait, who's your favorite American Girl doll?
I don't remember any of their names.
Do you remember any of the plots?
No.
And we're going to call her your favorite one.
The plots. Samantha? Is that one?
Confirmed Samantha Girly.
True.
Both of us.
Whoa.
They are weird.
I don't remember. I remember they were really easy to get questions right on without paying that close of attention to the book. Like they had similar sorts of arcs in all of them, I feel like.
I want to listen to Wednesday Purring. I hope it shows up.
I can't even hear her.
She's so cute. And sorry, you can't see her because I'm not changing this camera again. What do you think Wednesday would read?
I think of Wednesday as more of an author, you know? I think she's experienced all the stories she needs to.
Yeah.
She's just a creator.
She really is.
More than a consumer.
All right. So do you want to talk about now your books?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to give some like brief rundowns of what I read and how I felt about them.
Oh, and guess how he felt about them. Okay, put What do you think? Is he gonna like all of them, hate all of them, or feel neutral about all of them? If you clicked hate all of them, you're right.
Hey, I think I like 2 of them out of 15.
Okay, good.
So not a great hit rate.
We'll mostly talk about the ones you like.
Yeah, okay. So the first one I read was Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, and it follows this guy, Cyrus. Oh, here it comes. And he's a first-generation immigrant that's come from Iran. He's an alcoholic in recovery, and we follow him as he kind of enters a new chapter of his life. We get flashbacks to understand him as a child, to understand his mother, whose death in a plane crash is kind of the precipitating event for a lot of his ideology and a lot of the driving action in this book. I think the plot was pretty interesting. I think Cyrus was an interesting character. I think his relationships with people were interesting. It was incredibly beautifully written. Kaveh Akbar he's a poet, I think, generally is his usual medium.
He mostly writes poetry.
Yeah, and it really comes across. The prose is gorgeous. It's really effective. I liked it a lot. It was a really, really good way to start the year. It's like, this is going to be an awesome reading year.
2025 is my year.
Yeah, we're off to a good start. So next time,
nobody's year. We hate it. Can it be over?
Yeah, not awesome so far. So next, per some anonymous, unidentified person's suggestion, I read The Cruel Prince, which was fine. Do you want to talk about The Cruel Prince at all?
Yes, The Cruel Prince is, everyone says, including me, an excellent book, a very good book. Yes, it is YA. Mm-hmm. And
I'm not great with anything that's not targeted at adults. I don't know why.
You used to like reading Harry Potter as like a comfort read. Sorry to out you like this.
Yeah, I think I still read it as a comfort read, but it's not that I like it. It's that it's such an easy book to read. I read it a lot to go to sleep, which I don't think is a ringing endorsement of its ability to enthrall. Okay. If I read it to put me to sleep.
You were at least a little enthralled by The Cruel Prince because you kept asking me like, who is it? Who is the one? Who is the one that who is the guy?
Yeah. But that's mainly because when I got it right, when I asked a question and I was right about it, she told me it wasn't that. And I was like, did I misunderstand everything about this book?
I'm an excellent liar, and also I forgot.
Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't think it was bad per se, but I don't love fantasy. I don't love romance, and there's not a ton of romance in this.
It's a great book. It's a great book, and I personally love I love a little reversal enemies to lovers. I love that.
Yeah.
Ugh. And I love the intrigue. I love the drama. I love the silly fairy rules. Is there any piece of literature that you found that you like that incorporates like fairy lore?
I haven't read a ton outside of like fairy tales.
I just remembered. I think this was maybe one of my favorite series on the No Sleep subreddit years ago. Okay. And it was about this person who inherited a carnival with like carnival rides and stuff. And it was on their land, and the land had rules, and the performers and the attractions, they were all run by these, like, are they people or are they creatures or cryptids or something? And then as it turns out, it was one of those no sleep things where it's like, there are 5 or 10 rules and you can't break any of these rules, otherwise you're gonna die. And
so this just the Bible?
It's like a whole thing on No Sleep where it's like, why wouldn't you walk under that tree 3 times or whatever? But the answer is because it's like they're fairies, but in the like evil sort of folklore way. Or like if you drink out of this guy's skull cup, he is going to ask you to drink out of the skull cup. He really wants you to drink out of it, but if you drink out of it, he gets your name, and then he gets to be you and walk in your skin or whatever. So I think that I was already primed to love fairy lore when it's a bit creepy, and I had not encountered that. Having switched to, fantasy romance and like ACOTAR type fairies, I had not encountered that in a while. And I was like, oh, this is the thing where fairies are they really are amoral.
Oh, ACOTAR fairies aren't like that?
No, they're like that. But they're not like that. It's one of those things where it's like, it's so rare for someone to have their own special secret fated mate. And then everyone in the book has one. It's like so rare and special.
The heck? Well,
and all of us have one.
Is special.
And fairies don't have the same morals as humans. They're like so much. They don't have the same rules, and they don't care as much. Only they actually care so much.
Dang.
They're actually really good, like heroic people. Anyway, that's I think maybe why I liked Cruel Prince so much. But it is also just a good book. It's a good plot. It's a good pacing. It's a good mystery. It's a good resolution in my onion. So basically I'm saying you're wrong.
I mean, I probably have to be. It has like such broad appeal. It just didn't work for me. I'm not saying it's bad. Like there are books that we'll talk about that are bad, that I think are objectively bad.
You just like a different type of thing.
Yeah, it just didn't do a lot for me. Outside of like, I stan Vivi and Maddock. They're...
Red Cat.
Yeah, they're cool.
Cat eyes.
They're cool.
I really like them a lot.
Yeah.
Your water bottle is in Wednesday's way.
Oh, I'm sorry, Wednesday. The next thing I read was The Villagers or Huasipungo. I hated this book. It felt really exploitative. I think at the time it was important because it brought awareness to the plight of indigenous people, but reading it now, it just feels like some rich dude writing a terrible story and like interspersing it with the kind of events that happen to people that are completely separate from him. It was either badly written or badly translated. It doesn't help that it's a book from the 60s, so all of the forewords were extremely racist.
Oh no. Wait, how do you spell Huasipungo?
Huasipungo.
Where is this from?
Ecuador, I think, is the country I read it for.
Oh, you were talking about this one, right? Where it's like, these are historical events.
No, they're not actually historical, but they're vaguely related to events that were happening all of the time in the country. So it's not like this person took stories. He just was like, hey, this is the kind of injustice that happens frequently here. What if I made up a really contrived situation that was vaguely similar to that sort of thing?
So all of historical fiction?
No, because like some historical fiction's good, and this isn't. Like this is a really bad book.
Exploitative?
It's very exploitative. I mean, it's just some rich dude that wrote stories about people he hadn't ever spent any time with or understood in any way. There was no like research done. I think one of the interviews at the time, he said something like when he was 3 years old, he lived on his uncle's land and saw some of these Huasipungueros or whatever. And so he felt like he understood them. And that was the extent of his research into the indigenous people living in these situations. So it's...
Yeah. What do you do when, and I'm sure that there is an answer to this, and I'm just going to be ignorant for a moment. It's just, what do you do when you're like, wow, the people in my life don't know about this. They've not experienced this, and this is like a whole thing that happened to people in another place in the world. Mm-hmm. And the way that I can bring any attention to this thing that happened is by writing about it. And my skill set is as a fiction writer. So here I am talking about these things that happened.
That's not his skill set.
That's
based on this book. That's not his skill set.
But it's like, how do you, if you are trying to like, I guess, is it your job to broaden people's horizons?
I mean, I think it can be. I think that he could have written nonfiction. He could have just actually researched and written actual events.
Perhaps
he could have gone and like talked to people and adapted actual stories in fiction. I think he probably should have been a better writer of fiction if he were going to do that.
Who's the Wednesday now? Me, I'm in the seat.
Even if he wanted to intersperse some of his own terrible fiction between like stories that actually happened to people, it really just felt like he didn't talk to people. It didn't feel representative of what was actually happening.
It's also a little bit like, it's one thing to fictionalize like ancient Rome, because either we have those stories or vases or we don't. Or, Pompeii graffiti. But there's nobody that's still alive from ancient Rome, as far as I know.
Well, what about those vampires?
I think the vampires are from a different world because there's two suns.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
moons. It's two moons.
Oh. I think there's some utility in fictionalizing just because you can give distance. It doesn't... Maybe people wouldn't have wanted to have been identified personally if he had written it. There are some issues with nonfiction, right? It didn't feel like he knew the subject, which felt bad.
It's a little cringe, to be quite honest. I thought of two examples. Fever 1792, which is, I think, a middle school aged book that was my favorite book for a long time in middle school, where it was just a historical account of yellow fever. And as you know, and now everyone else knows, I love to learn about dramatic medical things that can happen.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite little interests is, what's this disease?
Yeah.
And then when I was in high school, I don't know if you know this about me, I wrote a play called Graveyard of Moths, which I think there's a movie now. Not of my play, but that's what it's called. And I'm like, no way!
It's like Graveyard of Fireflies, right? And I think it predated.
We're going to have to Google all this because I wrote this in 2009. And it was about starvation in the Ukraine in 1933. And also, my characters were lesbians.
Graveyard of Fireflies, 1988.
Wow.
It's really depressing.
Did you hear what I just said?
Yeah, the gay Ukrainians.
That starved to death.
Okay.
What was the plot? The plot was they just they get visited by Russian soldiers, or is it the USSR at that point? It is, definitely.
So are you, just to clarify, are you offering yourself up as an example of what you should do?
Of what you should not maybe do. Okay. But, I was 17 and I was doing it to learn how to write plays. Okay. And also to learn about history. So maybe it's something kids are allowed to do.
Oh.
For a school project.
I don't know how old he was when he wrote it. Maybe
and
he was 17.
And you don't publish that.
Yeah. Long story short, I really hated it. Next, I read Leviathan Wakes, which is the first in the Expanse series. I was really excited when I started reading it. The first 150 pages, 200 pages of this book were great. You had some characters that were really tropey, but it worked in the context. But then the book just kept going, and the characters didn't develop. And by the end of it, I was just like, oh my God, I don't want to read about these characters at all anymore. Which was a real bummer because the kind of driving force of the plot, the mystery that really drove the second half of the novel, I thought was really interesting and well done. But the characters were bad. And the Julie, the detective fell in love with this girl that he was tracking down nominally to kidnap and send back to her parents.
Romantic.
And he fell in love with her without ever meeting her, and then it just gets more cringe from there. I hated the characters in this book. I hated them. And it's not like a book where the author was trying to make unlikable characters. Like, I think you were supposed to love these characters.
Like authors do that a lot, is they make these like asshole characters, and then you're like, how am I supposed to care about this?
Yeah,
Save the cat.
I hated the characters. Hated them. So, did not like that book. 2 stars. Next, I listened to Death in Papa Noel, which was a really short...
And I wasn't invited this time.
Well, it was only like 2 hours without speeding it up. So I think it was like 2 half-hour drives, basically, to get through the whole thing. And it was fine. I don't think it worked nearly as well as the longer versions of it, but I liked it okay.
This is a Foley Valley mystery?
It is a Foley Valley mystery. So I like Ian Moore as a narrator. I think he's funny. I just don't know that 80 pages or whatever this was is...
That's so short.
Really the length he should be writing things in.
Yeah.
Another one you might have thoughts on, Station 11. I didn't like it.
We did talk about Station 11 in our last video, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. I don't think we have to talk too much about it, but not one I loved. Next, I read Mammoth, which there were some interesting ideas in here. It was kind of about like an anti-capitalist lesbian who did funny things, like decide that she wanted to gestate. So
Sorry, what?
yeah, she wanted to gestate.
I want to gestate. Let me gestate. Let me.
So she'd occasionally have sex with men. So there were like funny things like that, but then there were
That's
also...
not how you gestate. Oh, she wants to actively gestate. I'm
Yes.
thinking as a fetus.
No, she wants to gestate.
Ew, did you think I wanted to...
I mean, I was like, I don't understand
We
what
need to
you're
have a
talking
talk about that. No. I want to be the fetus.
Yeah.
Let me be the fetus. Let me be the fetus.
So there was funny stuff there, but there was also a lot of fairly depressing stuff, and she's also like a sociopath, and there's like a cat hunting scene, and
Ew.
I don't know. In general, I wasn't really here for it. Not my favorite book. Next is Aue or Aue. It was really, the author, I think, is good at writing. The prose was beautiful. It was just like a maximalist kind of trauma porn sort of thing, and
Just like, well, maybe I do like, because I'm into true crime now.
yeah, maybe you do like it.
Who knows?
After that, I read Drive Your Plows Over the Bones of the Dead, or Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. And this was for Poland. And it was just kind of uneven. There were like some good things. I think like a militant animal rights activist, huge slay. Honestly, that's
Huge
great.
slay. We love that.
But there were also long, unbroken sections of astrology. Don't love that. So, I don't know. I guess if you're less absolutely horrifyingly bored by astrology, it might work for you. But there were large sections of the book I just couldn't read.
And Wednesday's being bad right now. And
Yeah.
we talked about this in our last one. If you wanted to go check out that one, he talks more about astrology.
Probably.
And I found some really good pictures of crabs.
Oh,
'Cause
true.
he's a Cancer.
I am a Cancer. Next was Wild Houses, which is in Ireland, and it's this story of a family. I'm kind of just a few cousins, 3 cousins. And they kidnap someone and keep them in a family home to extract payment from the kidnapped person's brother.
How are you picking these books?
So this was a Booker Prize nominee. And this one, it was just kind of boring. And with that, description, I feel like you would think there'd be some driving action. I wasn't really necessarily in it for character development, which is good because there wasn't a ton. I wasn't that invested in it. I don't think there was anything bad about this, but I didn't care. Next, I read All Systems Red, which is the first in the Murderbot series. And this one gets a lot of praise as like autism representation. Mm-hmm. But this was just kind of a short, sort of boring action novella that did not do a lot for me. Okay, so what was we did talk about this in the last video. Yes, we mentioned it. What was autistic about it? I think that Murderbot just doesn't really understand how to interact with the people around them. I think my understanding is the first book isn't really representative necessarily of the entire series, so it's supposed to get more autism representation, but I just did not care after the first book. So. I mean, Akatar is not represented by the first book. I just don't have time for series. Like, if you have a bad book in a series, I'm done with the series. Like, there's so many other books in the world that... That's true. How many books are in the world? A lot. I don't know. At least 100. At least. And you're asking me to read a bad one so that I can read some that are less bad? I'll just go read less bad ones. I wish we had your book that you wrote. True. In the third grade. Someday. It's mostly pictures. Yeah. So next was Crocodile in the Sandbank. Really, really, really didn't like. It's another one where the series is supposed to really pick up, right? I don't see how it could. I think the person at Book People really liked it, and they were like, oh, it gets better over time. But I don't see how anything in this could be redeeming, honestly. It's just like racist for no reason. When was it written? It was written in the 70s, but it's written about Victorian English people in Egypt, but it's not like, so the racism could exist if you're trying to be realistic for the time period, but the racism isn't Victorian racism. It's 1970s racism. Oh. So it's like the author was clearly embarrassed by the idea of having Victorian racism in it, but was like, it needs some racism. And it's like, you really should have cut it out. My concept of Victorian racism is how curious these people are, and 1970s racism as we must actively oppress this group. Oh, I don't know. Then maybe it is Victorian racism. For me, Victorian racism is like literally ignoring everyone and colonizing actively. Yeah. Colonizing is different from Jim Crow. And you heard it here first. Well, I mean, I think American racism is... It's very special little pustule. Yeah, it's on another level. Mm-hmm. But I think that, like, there weren't slurs or anything in it, you know, which people just did that in Victorian England. I wasn't there. So, like, I don't know. It was, like, very clearly the author was self-conscious about racism, but decided not to take it all out. But then made the Victorian English woman a feminist, even though first wave feminism didn't exist for another 60 years. Truly unhinged stuff. Like this is where fantasy kind of, in a sense, sometimes wins out, because it's like, oh, it's old timey, but it's not like the real world. Yeah, it was just it didn't make sense when the author chose to have some like verisimilitude. Yeah. It was like, oh, you have to include racism to be historically accurate, but you include feminism without worrying about historical accuracy. Yeah. It's like, you could have had both. You could have just been not racist and had a feminist author or main character. Yeah. Like, I don't know. And then it's kind of cringe. The actual narrative was very Scooby-Doo coded, which I guess you can like that, but it's just like, it feels bad in... What?
I said feels bad, man.
Yeah.
Wait, was there magic?
No, there was... I mean, spoilers for this terrible book, but there was the idea that there was a mummy kind of haunting them, but in a Scooby-Doo vibe, the mummy was just two people doing a prank, bro, to try and get some money. So I don't know. Like, I think I could see if maybe later books lean into that kind of silliness, it could become a fun series. It just didn't feel good reading it.
Okay, well, if you really think that John should read the next one of whatever that is, you should just put it in the comments and maybe convince him.
And I won't do it.
Oh.
Because
John, to increase engagement, you have to make them think that they can affect change.
Yeah, there's definitely a chance I'll read the second one, so pop off.
Only if somebody comments.
Yeah.
Only if.
Okay. Next was Project Hail Mary, which was good. I loved
that
Project
one.
Hail Mary. I feel like we talked about it quite a bit.
We did. And we finished it, and we both liked the ending a lot.
Yeah.
Only the last day that we were reading it is the only day we had not in the car. And he gave me one of his AirPods. And okay, I've got small ears. Okay, look at these things. They're like this big. And it kept falling over in my ear.
Yeah, and so just as background, the way the AirPods work is once they detect they've come out of an ear, they pause. So we're listening to the story together and it keeps pausing.
In different rooms.
Yeah, we're in different rooms and it keeps pausing. So I'm like, why do you keep taking it out? And what do you say?
It keeps falling out.
Okay, yeah, she says it keeps falling out. And why did it keep falling out? No. Why did you say it kept falling out?
Because my ear's too small?
Yeah. She's like, my ear's too small.
And that's just true. It is
Her
true.
ears are small. That's true. But I was like, I don't think the difference in the ear tip sizes isn't enough that I think it would cause that big of a difference. It's like...
I didn't know they wrote the letter.
They were falling out every 15 seconds. It was truly wild.
And it would have been funny if you had seen me trying to like keep it in my balance.
It would have been really funny because...
So I'm like, I have it tilted, I'm trying to...
Yeah, because she finally comes into the bedroom where I'm listening to it. And I see her put it in her ear. I had given her the left AirPod. And I see her go and put it into her right ear. And I'm like...
It kept falling out.
I'm like, what are you doing?
It's my first day on this planet. I've never been here.
So it turns out her ears weren't too small. It's just if you put in an AirPod in the wrong ear, it doesn't stay in. So yeah, that was a fun ending.
There have been times in which the headphones just don't work for me. And that's where that comes from.
Yeah, but it cannot be every 15 seconds where it's falling out, right? Like it has to stay in a little bit. Because like it was falling out without you even moving.
Call Steve Jobs and ask him.
Okay. I'll go knock on some gravestones. Mm-hmm. So I think these next two we haven't talked about at all. So the next one was Authority, which is the second book in the Southern Reach trilogy. And I liked it for the most part. I think that the workplace sort of tedium and the ennui and horror that comes from being in a place doing all of these things without being able to actually affect change or notice anything, a little too unsettling. Like it really hit a little too close to home in terms of it made me uncomfortable.
I thought you were bored by it because
No.
the first one, Annihilation, they're on. Is it an island or just a stretch of land?
It's just a stretch of coast.
A stretch of coast. They're in there. They're like walking through fields of mushrooms and seeing big slugs and stuff. And in this one, it's mostly set in an office.
Yeah, I mean, I think I miss a little bit some of the just kind of action of being in Area X as opposed to being inside of the Southern Reach. But no, I think it was just I don't think I'm in a place where I can confront the reality of like our everyday life being terrifying. Like I think I need a veil over it, right? Like I need Area X to be about climate change, but let's throw some artifice on it where it's a little separated from real life.
It's a little spooky.
Yeah, it's a little spooky, but you've got this like veil that you're viewing it through where you're like, if I think about it, it's climate change. I think in Authority, you don't have to think about it when he's in the office. You're like, oh, this is just soul crushing. That's what we do every day, all day.
And that's how he convinced me not to read it.
Yeah, so it was a little...
Although, honestly, I've read Annihilation, and it was one of those instances in which you're talking about this book, and I'm like, I don't remember that part. Oh, I kind of remember that part. Oh, so I feel like I would just... And Annihilation's this big, so I'd have to just reread it to get into the sequels.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very different vibe. And... parts of Authority hit a lot closer to home, and I don't know, I was uncomfortable reading the Office stuff, and I think Control is not quite as interesting a protagonist as the biologist was. So I do think there's a little bit of a drop off in terms of our narrator, the person we're primarily inhabiting, but I think the cast around Control was interesting. We
do talk about Area X enough in this book.
Yeah, you don't talk about it a ton, but it is present, and you do learn some things about it. So I don't know. I think it's good. I didn't enjoy it as much as Annihilation, but it's still like a 4-star book. You know, it was good. It was okay.
He's not off the wagon yet.
No, I'll read the next one because I don't think it will be in the Southern Reach, the next one. So I don't think I'll have that. But towards the end, the Office itself became unhinged enough that it didn't really resemble reality, and I liked that.
You haven't watched Severance yet, have you?
I watched a few episodes of the first season. I've not seen the second season. Yeah,
that's what I think of when I think of unhinged office horror is Severance. And then you've got just one more book that you've read in January, right?
And it was Midnight's Children. I really didn't like it. I think now that I have a little bit more space from it, I feel less negative about it. The first third of the book is just so incomprehensibly boring that it's so hard to deal with. It's so hard to get through. I don't know who was like, what if we wrote 160 pages of something no one wants to read? It was so boring. And it picks up after that, but it's just like, it's really hard to care about the characters after being bored for so long.
Aww.
And so it does definitely, the pace increases, lots of stuff starts happening, and like with some distance from it, I'm like, okay, some stuff in the back half of the book was pretty cool. But I was just mad. I never would have finished it if it wasn't a book that I was reading for a country and the Read Around the World Challenge.
What country?
India.
Nice.
But,
unfair.
It's just, I hated the first third of the book so much. The first third of the book is probably the worst thing I've read in years, maybe ever. It's just like we're following the main narrator's grandfather, his kids, one of whom is the parent, well, spoiler alert, parent of our narrator. And so the first third is just going through their lives and some of the history of India leading up to the partition, and then the separation into India and Pakistan.
Is this based on true events, or is it just this person who was like...
Oh, no, this is very heavily... It's very allegorical about the creation of an independent India. Like, everything ties into it.
So I can see why you started it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like mythology in it, you know, from that part of the world. There's the actual description of it sounds incredibly interesting. Like it's a very interesting period in history. It's magical realism eventually. But oh my God.
Is it like when I tell a story sometimes and I'm like, wait, but you have to know the
Yes.
lore. And then to understand the lore, you actually have to know what happened before that.
Yeah.
And then the story is like timeline wise all the way over here. And that's really the interesting part. But I'm like, okay, so my mom and dad met in Myrtle Beach.
No, it's almost exactly like that. And it's rambly and digressive in that sort of way, in like a postmodernist kind of way.
I understand the urge.
If you're going to do that, for me, I think that you have to make the actual journey kind of interesting. It doesn't necessarily have to have interesting plot or anything, but the prose needs to be interesting. The book was occasionally funny, but not at nearly the frequency necessary to keep me interested. The characters were pretty boring, and granted, they're largely meant to be allegorical. They've got these sentences, and I mean, they're not that long, but you're talking like half-page sentences where you're like, nothing's happening. Like, not just nothing is happening plot-wise, nothing's happening character-wise.
You're not getting descriptions?
You're getting descriptions, but they're not like important. Like the prose just wasn't enough to really deal with it. I was just so bored. You know, it's like if you're gonna write 150 pages of tangents, it has to be like Ulysses level interesting in terms of its construction and prose. I just wanted to put it down every time I picked it up.
Oh, sad. So that was January for you.
That was January.
Okay.
So it started off really good, was not great, ended okay, and then the last book I read in January was pretty bad.
So February, can't say that word. February, you've started Mongrel, which
Yeah.
you're liking a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we need to get into necessarily
What's happened in this next
what's
month?
happened in this next month.
Because who knows? I'm definitely going to read more of the Blood Grace series. We're definitely going to finish it.
Yeah.
And you're definitely going to read some more Gen Fic.
Yeah, I'm going to try and knock out some of this stuff up here. So we'll see. I guess my goal for this year is to try and get through those 2 shelves of unread books.
This has been the Honey Bear Warehouse. Do we have any other things to say?
I do apologize that Noodle didn't make an appearance in this video. Maybe we can get some B-roll.
Get her. And Noodle doesn't know how to read.
And that's better for everyone.
What would she read if she could read? I think she'd be a horror girly because she's a black cat.
She's terrified all the time, so I think she'd be more into like self-help.
I'm terrified all the time, and that's why I like horror, is because I need to process things.
So maybe she would be a horror girly.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, we've really had a digression here after. But
That's been the Honey Bear Warehouse. And we do this all the time.
yeah, this is a normal thing that we've done multiple times
A normal
before.
type of handshake that if you go out in public, you'll see us doing.
Yeah.
For like hours.
Yeah.
Just us going like this.
Yeah, so thanks for watching. Goodbye.